Hi, so I'm back with the first video this year. I decided to take a break for a couple of months to finish working on the expanded edition of my acupuncture book, and I'm happy to announce that after almost 1.5 years, the best version of the book is finally available for purchase on Amazon and soon also directly on our website. So today I want to start a new series of videos where I will challenge lots of the current nutrition and lifestyle trends with common sense backed up by latest research. And today we will begin with food and several popular diets as it relates to longevity. So let's get into it. Look, we all want to live longer and healthier lives. Many people also want to lose weight and look better. Unfortunately, none of the popular diet has ever been proven to do just that. Keto diet, carnivore diet, paleo diet, whatever diet, all made up by someone who took usually a decent concept applicable to a specific condition, twisted it, and then turned it into one-size-fits-all diet prescription that people should follow to lose weight, be healthy, and live longer. Well, there is a one issue with this concept, and that is that none of these diet plans have ever been proven as safe and beneficial in the long term. Now, when I say long term, I don't mean 5 to 10 years, but at least 100 years. I mean, let me ask you, how big of a problem has obesity been 100 to 200 years ago? Well, by my last check, we have not seen it becoming a major problem until about past 50 to 60 years ago. So does it mean that everybody was following the keto diet or any other of those insane diets at that time? And that's why they were not obese? I mean, come on, we all know what the problem is. We eat too much, big part of that being a junk food, and we don't move. So do you really think that we can fix this by eliminating carbs and snacking on steak because carbohydrates are the evil? I'm exaggerating, but I hope you get the point. So let me ask you another question. Which society anywhere on the planet in the recent history of human mankind was able to eat mostly meat or animal products and live to be 100 plus years old? I'll help you. None. That's simple. Why? Because from the dawn of human mankind, meat and animal products have been so scarce that it was impossible for the majority of population to live only on that. If you go anywhere in Southeast Asia, in areas where people still struggle to make ends meet, you will see that for the family to put a chicken, pork, or any other form of animal products on their table, it's literally a holiday. These families survive mostly on plant-based food that they can grow either in their own backyard or pick up in the wild. But I guess that folks who promote these diets think that people in the Western developed countries have bodies that are somehow different and were made for these heavy animal protein loaded diets. I have traveled extensively across many Southeast Asian countries and observed their diets and the way of life. My wife is Filipina, and we discuss in length how she and most of her friends were grown up and what food was available to them, their parents, and grandparents. I have also seen a difference between affluent areas and those that are still struggling. You know what was one of the most obvious differences? The number of overweight people in the areas that had income from tourism compared to areas where people struggle to get by. And guess what? Those areas that continue to struggle to get enough food on their table have a lot more individuals living longer and healthy lives. Sadly, in most cases, this is not intentional, but unfortunately the result of their socioeconomic status. But it proves the point. But the best part is that this is not only my observation, but it is a scientific fact that has been well documented. There are still areas of the world where people routinely live to be 90 to 100 years old, enjoying healthy, productive life. They call these areas blue zones, because the researcher who tried to map these areas had no other pen than blue marker to mark them on a map. These areas include Okinawa in Japan, Sardinia in Italy, Loma Linda in California, believe it or not, but also Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica and Ikara in Greece. Lots of research has been done to study these places to find out what is it that they have in common. And one thing that the researchers noticed was that these individuals eat healthy, simple, mostly plant-based diet with some animal products. They do not follow any keto diet, carnivore diet, zone diet, or whatever diet they want to name. They eat simple whole food that is as close to its natural state as possible. Now obviously, diet is never the only factor. Several other components that create a healthy lifestyle have to come along with the diet. But the point is that this form of eating is not based on any preset rules of what one is or is not allowed to eat. None of the new fancy diets out there have any long-term track record of proving that they are going to make anybody live longer. In fact, the opposite is true, and there is plenty of evidence to show that diets high in animal protein, but actually high in any protein, are detrimental to our health and even can promote development of certain types of cancers. I hear some saying that people lose weight following keto diet or that they feel great. You know what I have to say to that? Well, people lose also weight on drinking only water and eating only saltine crackers. But it would be hard-pressed to find anyone who would think that it's a healthy way to do it long-term. The same goes for keto diet, carnivore diet, and all the other extreme diets. They sure can make you look great and make you feel better in the short term because you most likely also cut out all the other garbage from the diet. But guess what? It's not a natural way of eating, and our bodies have not been programmed to function on that kind of diet. Humans have never had access to this kind of food as the only source of nutrients. I mean, it's kind of common sense. The biggest issue I have with most of these unnatural diet plans is that they can actually be harmful, and there is lots of evidence to support that. I'll not be getting into great details about it today because I'll be making videos discussing just that. But I want to say that following any form of extreme diets, I don't care what kind of diet it is simply not a natural way of living. Eating should be enjoyable. It should not be a chore. So here is the punchline. Are you going to follow a diet plan proposed by someone just because they throw at you a bunch of studies showing you that it has this or that benefit? Or are you going to mimic as closely as possible the eating habits and general lifestyle of individuals from different parts of the world who actually have been living healthy and active lifestyle to be 90 or even 100 years old? To me, it's a no-brainer. But wait, what about all the studies that proponents of these crazy diets, I'm sorry, but I can't help to call them crazy diets, keep throwing around saying how these diets lower blood sugar, cholesterol, and whatnot? I have a few things to say about it as well. For one, we know this much about what the most important biomarkers for healthy body functions are. We know something, but there are so many chemical processes happening in our bodies every split second that we have no way to measure the majority of them, let alone quantify them and decide what they mean and how to affect them in a positive way. For example, we can measure blood sugar, and we know that if somebody has high blood sugar, in the long term it's not a good thing, and there are consequences to that. We do know things like that. But just as an example, we had no idea about 50 years ago that there is a strong correlation between having elevated level of an inflammatory marker called C-reactive protein and the risk of cardiovascular disease. We could not even properly measure and quantify it until very recently. So what I'm saying is that there are so many other things in our bodies that we still cannot measure that play a huge role in our health. What I'm trying to get across is that just because someone's blood sugar is within normal level because they avoid carbs and lost weight on one of these crazy diets, it absolutely doesn't mean that they cannot develop diabetes due to, for example, autoimmune disease or other causes a few months later, because we have no idea how to detect those causes by our current medical advances. So you see, Judging somebody's health by looking at the results of some laboratory results and making conclusion that because the lab results look great, the diet has to be great as well for their health is like looking at a house and saying, wow, this must be a great house because it has nice fresh paint, ignoring the fact that underneath the paint the walls are cracked and molded because the house has been constructed from poor quality material and has a leaking roof that you obviously cannot see unless it's raining. But it sure can feel great moving into this kind of house and living there for a while, at least until a strong wind and rain comes in and all the underlying issues surface. Another problem that I have with looking at research studies is the whole concept of studies. Most people don't know this, but having analyzed and read hundreds of studies during my doctoral training at Columbia University, I have seen how research data can be twisted and misreported to arrive exactly at the conclusions that the scientists are looking for. Why? Because the researchers know that majority of people will never bother to dissect how they collected and analyzed the data and will only look at the study summary. So I'm not saying that studies are completely worthless, but I'm saying that I will use research data only to support common sense and real-life application of the data. I will not use research data in and of itself to make my decision if something works or not. For me to accept something and adopt it as a way of a healthy lifestyle or eating, I want a proof, not on a paper, but a living proof. I want to see how many people have successfully applied these eating habits and lifestyle practices and benefited from them over a long time frame. To my knowledge, at this point, no one can show me groups of people around the world who follow the Keto Diet or Carnivore Diet or any other of the crazy diets their whole life and live to be healthy and active 100-year-olds. But as I said, there are several groups of people in different parts of the world who have been following independently similar eating habits and lifestyle, and they do live to be 100 years old and enjoy a healthy and productive life until the very end. That's what I'm interested in reproducing. I don't want to follow advice of someone who is telling me how to make $1 million. I want to follow advice of someone who has already made millions of dollars with a strategy that they are preaching. You do whatever you feel comfortable with, but make sure you apply common sense to your decision. So when it comes to selecting the most optimal meal plan, I say meal plan because diet is a bad word in my opinion. It primarily has to do with following common sense, in my opinion. Look at what works and what has been proven to work and stop looking for a magic bullet. I promise you, it does not exist. Food is a gift and we should cherish it, not struggle with it. But it does take a few considerations. The main one, in my experience, is for people to give up processed, fast food and snacks. This is the number one reason why most people do not succeed and what all the centurions have in common. But we will talk about other things in my next video. Until then, have a good one.